Hello there, gentleman and lady, perhaps. We're back for part 3. We're at 2 cent, 5 cent now. Oh my gosh. This is like a textbook squeeze spot. I think I'm going to pass this one up though. The reasons that I'm not going to squeeze here are that this guy's stack and this guy's stack, they're both quite short. At 2 cent, 5 cent, they have less than 40 big blinds, so there's a pretty good chance they'll just shove the rest of their money in. And I don't think King Jack offsuit is a very good hand to squeeze with, for two reasons. One, it doesn't play all that well post-flop, and two, the jack blocker I think hurts your cause quite a bit. Having a jack in your hand takes away a lot of the hands they could have opened or called with, which are going to fold to further raises. So yeah, had it been King Jack suited, I would have just called, but King Jack offsuit also plays very poorly in a multi-way pot. You're going to make unimpressive hands, basically. So the big blind defends, and he's been pretty tight. So far I've actually played like 20 to 40 hands, I guess, on each of these tables, so I do have a little bit of information on some of the players, which is different from the last one I did. I've seen him be pretty tight, and this board does a decent job of connecting with the range that he's going to defend his big blind with. Now, this situation has come up in every video I've done so far. I checked back after stealing, and now the ace comes on the turn, like every other time somehow. So I can very easily represent an ace. I also have a gut shot. A jack would make me a very strong hand. So yeah, it becomes a good spot to bluff the pot there. So just because I'm checking behind doesn't mean that I'm giving up all hope of winning the pot by any means. With position, I'm still going to end up with lots of good chances. This is interesting. Person I've never seen before makes it 30 cents to go. I think this just has to be a jam because he's playing, what, 45 big blinds effective? And he's open to so much that there's just a lot of money for me to win in the pot if I can get a fold. And it's not like I can re-raise and then fold if he jams or something. So we had king, queen, it looks like. Free money. This is interesting. Very quick call from him in the big blind. Implies to me a hand that hits this very well. I think I'm just gonna check. I could definitely see... I'm just gonna give up. I could definitely see betting with 6-3, planning to continue betting. I have a pair of threes, but I don't expect them to actually win the hand for me. What I do expect them to do is if I hit another 3 or a 6, I now have a hand that is capable of winning. So just using the fact that I have a low pair as something to give me a little bit extra equity. I know nothing about this guy. I'm going to float and take a stab on the turn if he checks to me, just because it was 5 cents, but yeah, when he continues betting the turn, I'm just going to give up. I have absolutely nothing. Potentially I could have folded on the flop even though he was betting 5 cents into 45 cents. I don't know if I've stressed this point yet, but the size of your bet is only relevant insofar as it is relative to the amount of money in the pot and the amount of money in your stack. If I make a $1 bet at 1 cent, 2 cent, it's a giant bet, but if I make it at $10, $20 table, well, it's not even legal. The minimum bet there would be $20, so that's super obvious, I'm sure. Okay, 10-2 suited is not a good enough hand to 3-bet. It's super obvious, I'm sure, if you think about it, but I think it's worth saying. So in that spot, he was betting 35 cents into a pot of like 90 cents. That's actually a relatively small bet. It's just over a third of the pot. Whereas if I opened to 35 cents before there was any money in the pot, that would be quite a large bet. Getting a little bit of lag, it looks like. I am uploading my 1 cent, 2 cent video while I do this. You know, yeah, I really don't think people are gonna be defending their blinds. I could just fold there even though he made a tiny re-raise. And that's interesting that he min 3-bet ace jack and then showed me it. That's definitely worth noting. I could see raising with king-queen offsuit here if the guy looked like more of a fishy player. Actually, I'm going to limp behind. When he limps in early position... Okay, I'm sitting to the right of a lunatic, which is not actually a good thing to be doing. I may fold again. He also may not be a lunatic. He may have got dealt ace-king or something. When he makes these tiny re-raises, it's just hard to fold. And ace-4 is like almost good enough, but playing out of position, sort of blind. I think I'm just going to let it go. And like my strategy, if this guy continues to re-raise a lot, is going to become to tighten up the hands that I'm opening, and that's not really a good thing for me. A clever play. I'm definitely tightening up a bit at 5 cent. 2 cent, 5 cent, I guess. I don't know that I'm doing it consciously. So, back to this point. This is like more advanced than anything we've talked about so far, probably, but if you think about the dynamics of a table at No Limit Hold'em, you're sitting here, whatever, you have 8 other people around you. So, thinking about what sort of people you want around you, one thing obvious enough is you probably want people who are bad at poker around you. So that's the simple, let's get that out of the way. It is a little bit more complicated than that, though. I'm going to check behind because there's not a whole lot of value to betting here, I don't think. And I'm actually going to check the turn again and go for value on the river, try to get called. I was going to say by pocket 8s, but hopefully he doesn't have pocket 8s at this point. If he bets, I think I have to call. I don't really expect to call here. I think he's folding usually, but I just think it's very, very, very difficult for him to have a better hand than me. So I'm risking very little making that bet, and if he does call every now and then, it's just free money. Sorry, I'm in all these hands, and I was making a point about table dynamics, I know. Here I'm gonna bet and jam. There's... No, I'm not. This guy's ludicrous. I'm just gonna check behind and see a free card. Against a better player who I thought was capable of folding some stuff, I would have bet there and jammed, because he can have something like 9-8 and call the turn, fold the river, or even fold the turn. It's definitely not like the best spot for a bluff, but it's not a bad one either, and I did have a gut shot and an overcard. So, back to table dynamics. The seats at the table are unique as far as you're concerned. So it's not just that you want bad players around you, you want bad players in certain positions. The best thing is to have a bad player directly to your right. And often at higher stakes games where there's only one bad player at the table, having that player directly to your right is referred to as having the Jesus seat. It's such a big deal to have that player directly to your right that, yeah, there are people sitting in the lobby trying desperately to get the best seat at a table whenever a bad player sits down. The reason is that you almost always have position on them. The only time you don't is when they have their button. Gee, I almost want to limp behind with this 8-7 offsuit against him. I think I will. Now, I don't really think I have another 2 streets of value here with 9s against a guy who called my early position open. I don't think I can call fold with 9s. I think I can fold if he bets again, though. I don't expect another bet. Cool. And he played pocket 2s like that, which is psycho. It's a very easy fold on the flop for him. So yeah, you almost always have position against the person on your right. So when they're a bad player making lots of mistakes, that's a bigger deal. If you think about the ways that you can win money off poker, basically win money off people in poker, you basically are going to compare a person to an optimal player. And if that person puts too much money in the pots, I'm generalizing massively, but basically, if the person puts too much money in the pots, then you're going to beat them by playing tighter than you usually would and winning with good hands. Again, I'm massively generalizing. This isn't always the case. In position is cheap. Now, if the person plays and the mistake they're making is that they're not as willing to put money in the pot, what you're going to do is loosen up and just win their blinds a lot, is the way that you tend to beat those people. So those guys are a lot slower to beat. They only post their blinds once every 9 hands, and for some reason I'm just like really intensely fascinated by this particular hand. It's because it is heads up and I'm in position and we have very wide ranges. And I know almost nothing about the player. I think I'm actually just going to give up 8 high. Like, it's the worst hand I can possibly have. I didn't hit that board at all. So yeah, it's much faster to beat people who are willing to put lots of money into the pot when they shouldn't, because they put lots of money in the pot, and then you can win it. And those people tend to be the worst players. And if you're to the left of a person like that, then almost every time that they put money into a pot, you have the first chance to capitalize on it. It gives you a very large advantage at the table. So ideally you would have a very bad player to your right at a table. What about the person to the left? The person to the left is a person who has position on you all the time. And there are 2 things that you really don't want in a person to your left. One is them being a very good player, but that's obvious. You always want people to not be very good players. I could see 3-betting with this hand, but I think it's sort of a waste of it. I think it would be a little bit better to call against this player. So you don't want them to be good players. The other thing that you really don't want is for them to be aggressive players. Because if they're aggressive players, it really hampers your ability to just play poker. God, I want to fold. You like quickly bet almost pot, and I have basically nothing here. The only way that I'm winning, I think, is if he has something like Jack-10 of spades, but I'd expect him to take a little bit longer making the bet, so I'm just going to make a disciplined laydown. That's very disciplined. No way I would have made that laydown at higher stakes. So that's like the person to your right and the person to the left, and those are the people who affect you the most at the table by far. It's rarer to be in a pot against somebody sitting across the table from you, because like when me and him are posting blinds, we're likely to get into pots with each other, and when he has the button, us two are the blinds, these 6 guys are likely to fold quite often. I have a hand that is tempting to donk bet with. It's a hand with sort of lots of mediocre potential. I have a 3-card straight, so there are lots of cards that could come which would give me a stronger straight draw, and I have a backdoor flush draw, and I have 2 weak overs. There are lots of ways that my hand could be good on the turn to keep betting with as a bluff. Hitting a gut shot happens 8% of the time, so I can call here, assuming this guy isn't going to raise, just on the odds of hitting the gut shot. And I have position as well, so it may be that this guy checks and gives up on the river. Here I'm making my first light 3-bet, I believe, and we just got insta 4-bet, so we're folding. There wasn't really insta 4-bet. King 5 offsuit, I think, is a sensible hand to 3-bet blind versus blind, because I'm going to be able to call with tons and tons of hands, and the hands I want to bluff with are the hands which are just a bit worse than hands I could call with. It doesn't make sense to waste a hand I could call with on bluffing. I assume that this guy just like had a king and turned it. I maybe should have not even called the 5-cent bet. It just seems sort of crazy though. Yeah, it's tough to work out what to do when people bet 1/8 of the pot or 1/10 of the pot at you, because I'm not really used to seeing that. What was I even saying? I was talking about 3-betting light with hands that were worse than hands you could call with. Which means I'm going to 3-bet light, 3-bet bluff is what I mean when I say 3-bet light, with hands which are much worse when I'm 3-betting big blind versus small blind, because I can call with tons of hands there, compared to when I'm 3-betting like button versus early position, because there aren't that many hands that I want to call in that position against his tighter range. This guy just seems to be terrible at poker, and I have top pair blind versus blind, so I'm never folding really here. Do I want to just shovel money in though? I don't know about that. I think what I'll do is call. Now I have 2 pairs, so now I do just want to shovel money in. And honestly, my hand isn't that great. Like, there's a decent chance he can have a set. He could have a straight on this board even. Now he could have a flush. I think what's more likely for him to have is like an ace-9 sort of hand. So I'm not actually going to go for his full stack here. I think he could conceivably fold. Wow. Okay. The guy is an absolute maniac. I think we already knew that. I'll actually label him pink. He stands out considerably from the other players at the table who have mostly been doing sort of reasonable things. Here I'm going to 3-bet light in position with ace-2 offsuit. Another thing about 3-betting light is that when you're in position, players are going to tend to fold against your 3-bets or re-raise them, whereas when you're out of position, it becomes more appealing for the players to call and play post-flop in position against you. Well, there's a chance I have 0% equity here. He could have Jack-10 and I've just smoked, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he had a Jack. But I have a flush draw and a gut shot. It's like 30% to hit on the river or something. We miss. And if I did hit on the river, I expect to make a bit of money on the river on average, even though he could have me completely equity dead. So that's why I called there. So yeah, that's why I 3-bet ace-2 offsuit, which is a terrible hand for playing post-flop. But when you're in position, it's sort of a nice hand. It has an ace blocker, so it's less likely they have a very strong hand. The other card is a 2, so that's not blocking hands that they're going to fold, like a jack might. And yeah, it's not like I'm really going to call with a hand like that. Don't think it's worth calling with at all. So yeah, we talked about the guy to your left and the guy to your right. The other guys at the table really don't matter that much. Like the guy to your right and the guy to your left, you sort of extrapolate from the guy to your left immediately and the guy to your right immediately. One thing that's worth noticing is that the guy to your left by 2 seats, you actually have position on him. How many times? You have position on him when you have the button and position on him when you have the cutoff. And those are the times that he's posting blinds. So that can actually be nice. When I have the button, he's in the big blind. When I have the cutoff, he's in the small blind. And that makes it more likely that I can play a pot with him when I'm in position against him. It also means that I'm in position against him more often than I am against this guy sitting way over here. I've been raising to 3 times the big blind at all of these tables, which I maybe shouldn't be. Like, there's been very little pre-flop aggression, so probably 4 times would be fine. I've sort of been doing it because other people are doing it, but that's a very bad reason to do things, especially at 2 cent, 5 cent, where other people are not really making the best plays. Anyway, I opened to 4 times the big blind, even though I'd been opening to 3 times the big blind. And the reason I did that was that I had a strong hand and wanted more money. But I figured there was no way that they were going to know that I had a strong hand necessarily, because I was in earliest position. And it's fairly common to open a larger amount when you're in the earliest position, and a smaller amount as more and more people have folded. The reason that makes sense is that when you're in the earliest position, you'll tend to have a stronger hand. And so you're less vulnerable to people re-raising you, and you're getting more out of putting more money in the pot. Okay, this guy played quite crazy against me earlier with pocket 2s. He's now limped and called, and I've completely whiffed the board. I'm gonna try to check through the flop. Yeah, I don't know why I thought that would work, really. It's just, I think his most likely hand is something like pocket sixes, and I don't really think he'll fold it. So when I raised that hand, it was more with the thought that were I to flop a decent draw or a pair, I could get a lot of money out of him. Whereas when I flop absolutely nothing, I'm sort of just giving up the hand. Here I have quite a strong draw. I have the nut flush draw and the aces. Obviously an ace is always going to be an overcard to the board, meaning that if I hit an ace I have top pair. I get called by a super fish. At least by the looks of him. So against him, I think I'm going to check and possibly call. The thought of doing that is less appealing now. Okay, so the 8 of diamonds king, it completes flush draws, which I could easily have on this board. It also gives me a flush draw, and I still have a 4 to hit a gut shot straight, and an ace is an overcard, and 9 is also an overcard. So I'm going to keep betting and plan to jam the river on him. People do this to me a lot. It's not good. There's no hand that it makes sense to just jam all in with there. So yeah, dead time. No limit hold'em is tough to make videos of because the action is so, you know, speeds up and slows down depending on what hands you're dealt, what hands the other guys are dealt. We can watch this hand where our crazy friend has decided to go all in. Possibly he has a flush and thinks he'll get called by 3 aces, which would make sense, but I would not be at all surprised if he just had like ace 3 offsuit. Thought his hand was pretty sweet. I just have a gut shot on an over here. I'm just gonna give up. Alright, now I think I have to bluff. Whoa, don't bet $4. Reason being that I think there's a decent chance he folds if he doesn't have a heart, and there are lots of hands that were better than mine there that do not have a heart in them. My cousin just got home. Along with his mother, probably. He probably didn't drive home himself. He is 3. I should not be auto-checking fold here. But, well, I was planning to fold whatever the action, so you'll just have to live with it. So I wonder, let's go back here where that guy had queen 10. And he just like min raises with nothing, 2 overs I guess. Bets and calls a check raise with an open-ender straight draw on 2 overs. And then insta calls my half pot bet on that river. He probably calls a jam there, huh? Yeah, I think he does. Oof. I don't have a desk, so I'm like lying down in a bed right now. We're gonna do a little bit of squatting at the side of the bed. Mix things up. This is a hand that I think is just barely good enough to call with, rather than re-raising. So let's do it. And what's this guy's C-bet like? %86 of the time out of 6 possible. I'm actually gonna re-raise here. It's a little bit light. I just have a gut shot 1 over, but I think I should be able to represent clubs if they hit. I also think I have a decent amount of fold equity right now. He does end up folding right now, so that's sweet. Had I not known that this was a guy like capable of stealing fairly light and who continuation bet a lot, I probably don't make that play. We're a little bit deep with this guy, and okay, that guy just limped the button. I should probably have raised, honestly. So I'm basically only playing pocket 4s to hit a 4 on the flop there when I call. There was no way that I could continue on that flop, even though his bet was tiny. And yeah, set mining, which is, you know, what it's called when you call with a pocket pair to try to hit 3 of a kind. 3 of a kind is called a set when you have 2 of those cards in your hand, whereas it's 3 of a kind when there are 2 of the cards on the board and you have 1 of them in your hand. So a set is more powerful than 3 of a kind, even though they have the same showdown value, because a set is more disguised. It's less obvious that you could have it. I think people tend to overvalue what their expected return is when they set mine. I may have not even had a profitable set mine there, honestly. A lot of people sort of assume that they're going to get a ton of money out of their opponent when they hit a set, and that just doesn't really happen. So unless you have the ability to win the pot when nobody hits anything, which you sort of don't when you're out of position 3 ways, I think set mining is often going to be a lot less profitable than you might hear people saying it is when they're talking about low-stakes poker. The cutoff here is sitting out, so I'm actually going to open 9-7 offsuit. It's looser than I would usually open from the hijack. This is the button cutoff hijack, and then we get into like middle position, early position, early position. I have an overpair here against 2 gigantor fish, 67% VPIP, 71% VPIP. On this board, there are tons of hands with lots of equity. There's a decent chance that I don't win the pot, but I just need to get money in, because I am a favorite here, and, well, if I'm not a favorite, I should be close to 1, and there's no chance I could fold. There's too much money in the pot already. Neither of them had full stacks. Just need to get the rest in against him. I end up making a straight, which is nice. And yeah, I was the favorite on the flop when all the money went in, except he had kings. Why did you play kings like that, friend? Okay, well, I was almost the favorite. We're sort of deep here. Like, sometimes you can get fancy when you have aces and just call a 3-bet or what have you, but we have enough money behind that I just want to 4-bet and get it in.
And there I kept betting because the queen came, and it's just an overcard. It's very likely that I get a fold because of it. Same principle as continuing to bet on the king that I did in the last video, I believe. As you get to higher stakes, that starts to work a lot less because it's not actually that likely that I have a queen. People are going to work that out eventually as you rise in the ranks. Yeah, so the way that guy played kings was actually not that bad. He's a giant fish, so he wasn't thinking this. But were I in his shoes, I may have actually played the same way. Is it on this table? Yeah. So the action was, this guy is very loose. He's putting money in the pot all the time. And he just limps along, and then I raise quite large. So the default play with kings would be to re-raise pre-flop, facing just one raise. But in this situation, with a weak player who's committed a little bit of money to the pot, I'm going to make a loose call with sevens, I think, or I might even fold. I'm just going to fold. Don't know anything about this guy, but it looks like I haven't seen him raise before, and he's raising 4 times a big blind. Sevens out of position just doesn't play very well. That's a fold that probably lower stakes people don't make too often, I imagine. So because there's a lot of value in letting this guy keep playing the pot post-flop, I think calling there with kings is actually quite good. We're not going to get fancy here. So a standard 3-bet size is usually about 3 times their raise when you're in position on them. And he folds a lot here, by the way. Not that time. Basically, there's no way I can ever fold. It's too likely that he has ace-king here to get away from my hand ever. The question is, how do I progress with putting money into the pot so that I make sure I stack ace-king, but also get as much money as possible out of something like queens? And I don't really think that I get that much money out of queens, so I'm just going to bet, try to stack ace-king before the board gets super gross. It's less likely that he has ace-king now. There's only, one ace left in the deck. But after he calls, I don't know, maybe I'm stacking kings here. I definitely still just need to bet and jam the river. I have no idea what he played like that. Maybe he had king-queen and decided to call a 3-bet out of position, but that's a very, very poor call with king-queen. There's no hand that I really think he should have played like he played there. That's not the best board for pocket threes, huh? Only betting 20 cents. He's gonna hit that board quite often, but I get pocket eights to fold if I bet 20 cents here, and I think there are enough hands like that that it's worth just taking one shot at the pot. We got him. Alright, and That's 40 minutes, so I'm going to wind this video up now. I hope you enjoyed. I ran super hot, which is nice, but not necessarily representative. And yeah, we did some good talking, I think. Started to talk a little bit about table dynamics, talked more about continuation betting, and we got to talk a little bit about pre-flop play, which is nice. Because here at 2 cent, 5 cent, you are starting to get into a point where people are raising pre-flop and lots of guys are folding. It looks a lot more like real poker than 1 cent, 2 cent did. So, yeah. Next up, I guess, is 5 cent, 10 cent. And my bankroll is actually only $400 and some, so I'll probably go up to 25 cent, 50 cent, and then I'll have to, hang out for a while I build that up. See you guys around.